Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be back here in Chisinau. I came here for the first time in 1998 to win a crazy bet. And the bet was that I had to play and beat the entire Moldovan national football team at tennis, one by one. And I did this because I wanted to write a book. But my motive was I wanted to write a book. I'd already written a very successful book in the UK in which I won a £100 bet. I had to hitchhike around the circumference of Ireland with a fridge. And I won that bet, I wrote the book, it did well, and so the plan was to write the book, Playing the Moldovans at Tennis. And I came here to Chisinau in 1998, and what I saw shocked me a little bit. I had something of a kind of ethical crisis in my head, because here I was in the poorest country in Europe, and I was trying to gather material for my book. And I was going to go back to the United Kingdom, publish this book, and profit from it. And it didn't seem right. So I made a decision in my head that if this book came out and it did well, I would give 50% of the royalties to a trust fund for Moldova, and I would keep 50% of the royalties for myself. And this didn't seem like such a big deal to me, because this just seemed fair. I was coming to Moldova to gather the material, I should share with it. And I also, I also felt very privileged that I was earning a living doing something I enjoyed. Yeah, I like what I do. So for me, the incentive of money wasn't that strong. I already felt lucky. When there was enough money in a bank account to do something meaningful, I called the two doctors I'd stayed with when I first came to Moldova, Diana and Grigori, and I said, what should we do? We have some money. They said, let's open a care center for children with cerebral palsy here in Chisinau, and that's what we did. And I come every year now and see the great work that's being done in that care center. They've now even called it the Tony Hawks Care Center. This is to make me a full-time fundraiser. That's why they've done that. But it works really well. And then last year, we made a feature film, Playing the Moldovans at Tennis, and all the profits from this film are going to go towards that care center. And if you're interested, you can find out more about the film by going to that web address and find out how to get involved in the project. And what I really wanted to share with you today was how being involved with this has really enriched my life. When I come over and I see the work that's being done, I see the smiles on the faces of the parents of the children, I meet the children, I actually feel good about myself. My self-esteem has gone up since I did this. Undoubtedly, I feel happier. And I think there's evidence also, scientific evidence now, that shows I'm probably healthier. They have realized that in the act of giving, what can happen is our blood pressure can go down. Serotonin is increased in our brain. Serotonin is what makes us feel good. So there is a health benefit to this. So when I was asked to come and do this talk today, I thought, how could I take this experience that I'd had and transfer it to something that might be some sort of, give it some structure, maybe even a policy. So I'll be coming to that. But I started to do some research, and I thought, well, how much money is actually out there? So I had a look. I know that millionaire households in the USA, there's 5.1 million. In Japan, 6 million. China, growing all the time, more and more millionaire households. But there are a lot of dollar billionaires as well, 1,226 dollar billionaires. And they don't all just have $1 billion. Most of them have multiple $1 billion. Carlos Slim Helou has $74 billion. And I thought to myself, there are other things going on in the world apart from people making money. UNICEF, World Bank, they've made it clear that there are 1.1 billion in developing countries where there is inadequate access to water, 2.6 billion lack basic sanitation, and more than 660 million people without sanitation live on less than $2 a day. And I thought to myself, how many people actually think that it is a good thing that one person can have $74 billion and there can be all those people with so little. How many people actually do in their hearts know that this is wrong, but what they think is that there is no alternative system to the way we manage ourselves in the world? Maybe there is another way of doing it, but we just haven't found it yet. Now, I don't believe it was communism or is communism. I think you people in Moldova, you suffered a great deal under a system whereby the state took everything and an unrealistic amount of power went into the hands of petty bureaucrats who started making decisions about how people should live, telling them so. Creativity was crushed, the entrepreneurial spirit wasn't there. Generally speaking, I think it's fair to say it was an experiment that didn't work. But capitalism in its current form isn't working either. It relies on economies to keep growing. That is where the wealth is coming from for all these billionaires, is because economies keep growing. And in order for economies to grow, what needs to happen is people are being encouraged to consume more and more. And the planet cannot cope with this. Simple mathematical equation. In 2050, there will be around 9 billion people on the planet. That's 30% more than now. Now, if we keep consuming the way we are now, that number of people on the planet consuming that, they will be consuming 2.3 worth of planets. And the trouble is, we've only got the one. So, we're going to have to start thinking a little bit differently about the world. We might need to start making decisions based on a different set of criteria, other than just giving return to shareholders, other than just profit for big business. We cannot go on like that because the maths don't work. So how do we create a big groundswell, a change in the way the global economic culture thinks? I don't think many people are really thinking like that. So I started to think about this when I was asked to do this talk, and I wanted to come up with a radical idea to run by you. And the idea is that society decides what is a reasonable amount for somebody, an individual, to earn within a year, and how much is an unreasonable amount. How much is too much? How much before we start to get that feeling, this is really unfair? And then when we've decided what that level is, we do something about it. And we do something quite clever. We do something smarter than just taxing the hell out of these people, because that's been tried. And when you tax the hell out of these people, what they do is they say, I didn't vote for this government. I don't like the policies of this government. I don't even believe they're going to spend the money that they say they're going to spend on this. I don't know whether they're lining their pockets. I'm not interested. I'm out of here. So we do something much cleverer. What we do is we help these people. We help the super rich. And we help them because we actually don't dislike them. They have been responsible for perhaps just playing and winning at the only game in town, which is the game of capitalism. And everybody's playing it, and they happen to do well, and their business takes off, or they're in the right place at the right time, and they do well. And they're not necessarily bad people because of that. And many of them provide a lot of jobs. Many of them pay a lot of tax. So we help them. And how do we help them? We help them by steering them towards the greatest gift of all, which is the gift of giving. And some are already doing this. Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, they've got a thing called the Giving Pledge. And 58 billionaires have signed up to donating 50% of their fortunes to charity. It's pretty good, pretty laudable. But that's just 58 out of 1,226. So we need to give them a little bit more encouragement. So perhaps we could start a new idea, a new movement. Let's call it, for the sake of argument, New Equality. Okay? Let me run a little bit of an idea how this might work. Society decides. It caps how much an individual can earn in 1 year. Now that might be 500,000 euros, it might be 1 million euros, but it's decided by a democratic process after there has been much debate. Okay, then anything earned above this cap, the individual has to donate to charity. Or better still, they form their own charity. But taxation is paid as normal to the government, so the government will not lose out on revenue and services won't have to be cut. So let's just take an example. How would that work in a country like where we are now, Moldova? Let's say the Moldovan people discussed it and they decide that 250,000 euros is the maximum that anyone can earn in 1 year, which happens to be more than 100 times the national average of Moldovan earnings. So they decide that. What would happen? Well, say a businessman here has a fantastic year and they decide to pay themselves a 1 million euro bonus. What will happen is that they will pay tax on that to the government in the normal way, say 50%, let's say that's what it might be, in which case they would have an income left of 500,000 euros. Then what happens is this new equality cap kicks in at 250,000 euros, and then they have to, by law, donate 250,000 euros to charity, or donate it to the charity that they have started themselves. So that is it. That's the idea of new equality, and the idea is to make billionaires history. Now, it's a big change. Could it be done? Well, there's evidence to suggest that actually change can happen in the world, which isn't always motivated by profit, isn't always motivated by big business or a country's national interests. When slavery was abolished, businessmen lost out on huge amounts of money, and that's why they fought against it. But we changed it because we felt it was morally wrong and it had to be changed. Votes for women were introduced in most countries in the world as a result of just wanting to change. There's a universal declaration of human rights. There's no profit motive in any of them. What would happen if new equality was introduced? Well, there's a book called The Spirit Level, Why Equality is Better for Everyone, which goes into huge detail, studying all the countries in the world. And there's plenty of empirical evidence that shows that the more equality there is in a country, the benefits are huge. Improved health, there's a lower crime rate, better education, higher levels of trust. Okay. Go to equalitytrust.org UK and look at the figures. They're all there. But there are other benefits too. There would be a huge new sector created in the economy. The charitable sector would become huge. Young people could get jobs going out to work for these charities and doing things in society that helped their fellow people. There could be childcare, they could go and visit old people, there could be free coaching for sport in public parks. So many things could happen. And just imagine how these people would feel if they went to work in the morning knowing that they were contributing to the well-being of their fellow citizens rather than contributing to the huge wealth of a multinational or a billionaire, dare I say. So there'd be other benefits too. Motives would change for the better. The incentive to be a hugely wealthy individual would be gone. People would have to be motivated by something else, just as I was. My motive for making the film, playing the Moldovans at tennis, was so that we could build a bigger care centre, which we started to build here in Chisinau. And that's good enough for me, and it makes me happier. I feel better. So we can change the motivation of people. It doesn't have to be money all the time. And we could all relax and stop wanting to be rich. We've been led to believe that success is being rich. And there are many people out there who are working every hour that God has given them so that they can just make money and they're not spending time with their families and this kind of stuff. And we could take away the worst incentive, perhaps, that capitalism gives to people, is the incentive to cheat on your fellow man so that you can get ahead of them. Just think of all the dodgy dealings that go on around the world because people are trying to get ahead. Doesn't make sense. But is this naive? Am I being a naive dreamer? Aren't humans hardwired to be selfish? That's what we're told. What about the expression, survival of the fittest, from Darwin? Darwin wrote that in his book, The Descent of Man. He used that expression twice. There was another word he used in The Descent of Man, love. He used it 95 times. The people who chose to popularize Darwin seized on this expression because they wanted to lead us away from the way we'd been living for thousands of years, which was a cooperative way of living. Think of indigenous people. The highest societal value they have is cooperation. Darwin knew this. He recognized that the only reasons that we are here, that we've evolved and survived, in spite of not having huge fangs, colossal muscle mass, or great speed, we've survived because we cooperated and were sympathetic to one another. In a tribe, if the chief suddenly says, I'm going to live in a great big tent, and I'm going to have all the best land, and I'm going to have all the best food, and you can just have the scraps that are left there. They knew that that would create disharmony. They knew that that couldn't work. And yet, look at the disharmony that we have in the world and work out why that is. So to me, I think the arguments for new equality are pretty strong. But they're just my ideas. I wanted to create a forum where people could vote on this. I wanted to create a forum where people could pressurize their politicians into becoming involved in this kind of debate. We could ask them some questions. We could say, you've made it compulsory to do a lot of things. You've made it compulsory for us to have a passport if you want to travel. You've made it compulsory for us to pay tax. You've made it compulsory for us to have a birth certificate. You've made it compulsory for us to insure our car. Why don't you make it compulsory for us to be nice? Why don't we make it compulsory to do good with your money? Everybody wins. So, I've started a little website, makebillionaireshistory.com. You can simply go there, you click on whether you think this is a good idea, yes or no. There's a forum. Let's get a debate going. It would be fantastic if we got a debate going about this around the world, and you know what? We could say that debate started here in Moldova. Thank you.